'em up, drink 'em down, whiskey and cigars all around. Cheers, y'all.
Well. I got it back.
I love that sound. Yeah, you get your voice back.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this fine radio program known as Smokin' and Toastin'. It's a radio show. It's a video show. It's a podcast. It's a video cast. It's almost everything that
We're
it's supposed
ubiquitous.
to be.
It's
Yes.
love.
It's love. Welcome to show number 117. We are live in a place we've been before, but not really. We're at Maduro's in League City, and Maduro's Cigar Lounge is in the location that used to be. It was actually the location where we met this man to my right,
Yeah,
Mr. Alan Denney. The location that used to be the Man Cave. The Man Cave closed, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Won't get you in trouble, but we'll talk about that a little bit and talk about how this whole shop, this whole lounge, has been completely rebirthed and rejuvenated as Maduro's, and it's a really exciting thing to see.
It is, absolutely.
It's a great spot. So we are not only live at Maduro's, but we are also live with our good friend Alan Denney and with Jose Blanco from EP Carrillo. Jose, welcome to the show.
It's an honor and pleasure to be with you guys. I've heard a lot about it, and
Well, if it was from this guy, you know better than to actually take it all that seriously.
Just remember the good stuff.
Yeah.
well, the jury's out on that one.
So we want to come back and talk EP Carrillo. We want to talk cigars, but we do need to remind you that we're brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. We are proud to be associated with the guys at B&B. They're good people. They have an amazing bar, and Jeremiah works there, and we kind of dig him. So,
Yeah. Also bacon.
Also bacon.
That bacon.
Yes.
They have this
Bacon.
appetizer. Sorry, I can't even. Advertiser?
Yeah,
That's
advertiser.
funny.
I like that.
Bacon- We're the bacon advertisers. They have this bacon appetizer. So good. Blue cheese, bacon. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that.
We also want to thank our guest from last week, Tom Poehler, with Tatuaje and with a number of other cigar companies that he reps. Tom was a treasure trove of cigar information. So if you haven't heard or watched show 116, you should go back and pick that one up, because it was a lot of fun, and we had a really good time with him. And so here we are now. I wanted to say we're going to open, but Ian's just going to pour sort of an introductory.
Oh yeah,
beer.
right off the bat.
We do have a lot to taste today on the show, because we'll get to what you brought in a little while, because that got me all excited. But we have some other great beers and some whiskey to taste, and so we have all of that coming up. But we thought we'd just open with maybe a little toast with one of our absolute favorites, which is a seasonal, which is the St. Arnold Christmas Ale. And what's interesting is one of the beers that I brought along today, and it will be very interesting to kind of compare and contrast the St. Arnold Christmas Ale to the one that I brought, that is the Bell's Christmas Ale. And we've
Two of my favorite breweries.
yeah, we've done a lot of interesting comparisons with Bell's and our other favorites, and Bell's generally does pretty well. So we'll see. I have not tasted the Bell's Christmas Ale. Is a Scotch ale, so it'll be interesting to see.
And you know I love Scotch ale.
Yeah.
Also, I haven't tried the Bell's Christmas Ale yet, so this will be my first taste of it.
Very
I
excited.
have, however, blown through an entire keg.
A keg.
A keg.
Of
Now,
the St.
I'm
Arnold
talking about
Christmas
a
ale.
5-gallon slim, not like
Not a super keg, right?
not 13 gallons of
Not
it.
an
but-
Alan Denney sized keg.
Hey, what are we trying to say here?
Man has
no,
lost a lot of weight.
But I have blown through an entire keg of it at my house, and so I'm pretty sure I know what this tastes like.
Well, gentlemen, cheers, and Jose, thank you for being on the show today. We're very,
Yeah,
very
welcome
excited.
Christmas season.
Yeah, very excited to talk tobacco with you. And we can open, by the way, with me commenting on the amazingness of this little short cigar that Alan gave me that I lit up before the show started, and Ian's had one of these as well. Is yours done?
Oh yeah. I smoked mine until it was this.
Alan, what
It's
is
very
this?
little.
Down.
So
What is this little bitty gem that I'm smoking that's so
this
good?
is our Rothschild Jr. It is a little bitty. It actually comes in 5-packs, and some of the stores that we have them in, they break the 5-packs open and sell the individual cigars, $3 a piece, or you buy the 5-pack for about $15. So you got 5 nice little 30, 40-minute cigars.
It's a great little dog walker.
Yeah, little Maduro. We kind of undisclosed binder and filler on those, but it comes in Maduro and natural, and just a really great savory cigar.
I love the cedary aftertaste that I've got going on because I haven't fired up anything else yet, and I still got that flavor in my mouth. This came up because I got here a little early, and I said, you know what, do you have something I can smoke right before the show so I can fire something up on the show? Perfect size.
Yeah.
Well, and it might be one of our other cigars unnamed in a little smaller format, but it's our Rothschild Jr. It's available at most of our retail partners carry it. Of course, Fred carries it here at Maduro's.
Now, you mentioned that this the tobacco is unnamed.
Undisclosed.
Undisclosed. That was the word you used.
Undisclosed.
So I've noticed that's a bit of a trend, and Tom Puller was actually talking about this last week, that that there are cigar companies who either don't always disclose what tobacco's in their cigars, or maybe don't necessarily disclose all of the tobacco that may be in the blend. They may say, well, it's Dominican, and it may have Dominican in it, but it may also have Honduran and Nicaraguan or something else in it as well. You see that as a trend that might continue being a little less forthcoming with the information about the binder and filler?
There's a couple of reasons for that. One, maybe the company doesn't want you to tell, or doesn't want to tell you where they got it from, because realistically, I'll use one of Ernesto's greatest partners in cigars, and that's Plasencia. Plasencia is the largest grower and seller of tobacco in the world, and there are very, very, very few companies in the planet that are 100% vertical. And by that, I mean they grow it, they age it, and everything they use is their own. There's very
farm
few.
to product, so to speak.
I would venture to say that 99.9% of the cigars in Fred's Humidor have some Plasencia tobacco. Am I right, Jose?
Certainly makes sense.
And so with that, a lot of people, they want you to think, hey, we grow it. And they may be a grower. Yeah,
and they may grow some of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And they don't want you to know that, hey, we're buying some of it because we can't grow enough. Or it may be the fact of, hey, we're getting, yes, it's Dominican, but maybe it's Dominican from this crop this year and it's a different crop next year. So it tastes very similar, but it's a little different. So they don't want to say it's Criollo 99 or Corojo 9. They don't want to get super specific. On our stuff, when we advertise a blend, it's Mexican San Andrean wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, this and that. We'll tell you Dominican and Nicaraguan filler, or Dominican and Honduran. But if you were to ask me, well, which Honduran and where, I couldn't tell you. Jose probably couldn't tell you all of them.
The other thing too is I'm assuming your blenders and your company in general doesn't want everyone to know the exact blend overall, because that's like giving away your recipe to some degree, right?
A little bit.
I think we talked a lot about this last week, but the real secret to the cigars that you love the most, whatever those are, is that blend. And that's why it doesn't surprise me that everyone is using Plasencia, which they grow more cigar tobacco than anybody else in the world. It's of a very high quality. I'm not surprised that tobacco makes it into so many different companies' cigars, because in the end it's really about the blend, whether you're using all
the flavor,
Plasencia tobacco, or whether you're finding other things to blend it with to get the particular flavor, or whatever it is that you're conjuring up.
Correct.
It's all about having the right ingredients together.
You never know what's going to make the flavor. I have a friend of mine that has this. He makes these cocktail weenies for Christmas every year, and one of the major ingredients in it is grape jelly. You never know, but if you say, hey, that's got grape jelly in it, no one's going to try it because that's weird.
Yeah, that's awkward.
I don't know. Maybe that's part of it, too.
Well, there's a little bit later, probably not in this segment, but down the road, I want to talk about Encore a little bit. And I'm going to ask Jose to describe how the wrapper for that cigar is done, because it's a process that he knows way more about it than I do, because he's been down there and seen it. But it's an old way of doing tobacco, and it took Ernesto 2 years to get that wrapper right, and he was almost done. He was like, I can't get what I want. The tobacco was what he wanted, but he couldn't get the flavor exactly the way he wanted, and he did something. I'll let Jose give you the insight on that, because his knowledge way surpasses everyone else in this entire building compared to...
That's so fun.
I'm assuming we're going to come to that because we will be having a serious discussion of the Encore.
We will. Unfortunately, I don't have Encore for us to smoke today, but I did bring some other good stuff for
What
us.
are we going to smoke
So
today?
we are going to smoke Alencos, which I have out on the table here.
Oh,
So
very
this
nice.
is a cigar that came out November of last year. And if Adam would pay attention.
Careful throwing cigars. We don't want those to get.
So Alencos, it's part of our Elite series, which is just what it said. They're higher profile tobaccos, higher profile cigars. It's an Elite. We have several different series. We have our core series. We have our family series. We have the Elite series. In the Elite is our New Wave Reserva,
That is
Capital
a
Sol.
great-looking wrapper,
It
by
is
the way.
beautiful.
So
isn't
it
it?
uses Brazilian tobacco. It's a Brazilian wrapper, and so you get that natural sweetness off of it. But so this cigar actually came out. It was out in 2010, 2011 as a limited edition cigar, and Ernesto, it sold so well that he could not keep up with. He didn't have enough wrapper. And
Wow.
so what he actually did is he kind of had to wait and buy and procure more tobacco, and we re-released it in November of last year, and it's been a smashing success for it.
Jose, I wanted to ask you this question. We were talking about flavors and blends, and just what you just mentioned about this came out as a limited edition. You decided to come back and release it again once you had access to the tobacco necessary. How difficult is it for a blender to recreate the flavor of a cigar from crop to crop? You may do a release, it's fantastic, everybody loves it, and then the next time you go back to blend it again, it's a different year's tobacco, it's a different crop, it's going to have different characteristics. That's, to me, seems to be the
fascinating.
magic science
Yeah.
of cigar blending.
Well, to be honest, one of the main things about Ernesto and the majority of the big companies is that in our case, Ernesto's case, he has been in the business for over 40 years. So what Ernesto has done, that he has kept very tight from the people he buys tobacco. Like he mentioned Plasencia, but also the Perez family. Those are the people from ASP, but also Oliva. Not Oliva cigars, Oliva tobacco. So the main source is really, for us and for the majority of the company, is Oliva, the Perez family, and Nestor Plasencia, like Alan said, is the biggest grower of black tobacco in the world. But then you look at Connecticut, then you have the Perez family in Ecuador. They're the largest growers of Connecticut wrapper in the world, because you have Connecticut that's grown in Connecticut, USA, Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican, and also Ecuador. Even though it is a Connecticut seed
Right.
or some type of it.
And it's
in
considered
every
Connecticut shade tobacco, no matter where it's from.
But you have Connecticut shade, but also you have in Ecuador, it's Connecticut sun-grown. So
Right.
the difference between Connecticut USA and Connecticut Ecuador is Connecticut Ecuador is sun-grown, Connecticut shade USA is grown under shade. But what really makes the difference is the soil and the climate. So in Ecuador, in the region where the tobacco is grown, it's 320 days where the clouds are very low. So the effect that the shade would do in Connecticut or in Cuba or in Nicaragua and Dominican, the clouds does that takes out between 30 or 35% of the sun hitting it directly. Because what do you want on a wrapper especially? You want it to be very elastic. You want it to be very thin. So like Connecticut, Ecuador, in 3 years, it's already, you could use it. But Connecticut, USA, you have to put it away at least 5 or 6 years.
And this is
before
after
it's
you crop it and
after
you store it, right.
you grow it, you cure it, for a little bit of fermentation. It's hardly very, very little on that. Then you have to put it away. So what happens is, in our case, in a lot of the major companies, we are buying from the same source of tobacco year after year. Now, other crops going to be totally different every year. You have a year that rains a lot. What's going to happen? The leaves are going to be very big. They're going to have very light colors on them, hardly any oils, and it's going to take less time to be able to work with it than if it would be a crop where it's going to be hardly any rain. The veins are going to be very thick leaves, very oily and very dark. So the fermentation process on that, let's say on a Habano, or let's say on Arapiraca or a Connecticut broadleaf, it's going to be a longer time on fermentation and aging. And the temperatures, let's say on a Connecticut broadleaf, could go up to 130 to 140 degrees in the fermentation process of it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so a little bit like the way they treat wine grapes.
Very similar to
They'll
it.
starve the wine grapes a little bit of water to make them more flavorful, or to get the desired thing, they'll control the water amount. So what you're saying basically is if you have less water in a season, less rain in the season, you end up with a leaf that's going to be a little more intense and a little more, very much like wine grape.
I've been interested in learning more about Connecticut broadleaf because, once you sort of venture into more flavorful tobaccos, you don't smoke as many of the, milder Connecticut shade wrapper type tobaccos, and discovering that Connecticut broadleaf was a completely different animal was kind of a revelation to me when I did that. It's like, man, that wrapper can be extremely flavorful and not quite so mild. What is it about broadleaf that makes it? Is it the way it's fermented? Is it?
No, it's look, you have Connecticut. You hear the word broadleaf, but you have broadleaf grown in the Connecticut River Valley, but you also have broadleaf grown basically in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Even though the leaves are very similar, but I personally like more Connecticut broadleaf because of the sweetness it has. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're working on broadleaf, it doesn't matter if it's Connecticut broadleaf or Pennsylvania broadleaf. It's the fermentation process and all the work that has to go into that is more intense than any other type of tobacco you have in the world.
Wow.
You really have to work it.
Wow. So it's a high work, high reward sort of a wrapper. So
the wrapper on this cigar right here is absolutely gorgeous. By the way, it's just it's so uniform and it's got a nice firm feel to the whole thing. The oily feel to it, a little bit of a toothy kind of leathery kind of feel to it. I love that. Feel like the cigar is made real solid, but the draw on it, and I just skimmed the end of mine with the cutter, and the draw is great.
That's a Brazilian Arapiraca, and a lot of people, and I talked about this in all the blending seminars that I've done all over the world. People don't realize that we all use a lot of Brazilian wrappers. Mm-hmm. The one that we used to use a lot was Mata Fina, but the growers in Brazil, because of the yield, started to substitute Mata Fina for Arapiraca, which has a lot of sweetness to it. It's very aromatic, and it's good to blend with. But also, you have also their version of Corojo that's a Baiano that a lot of companies are also using. What a lot of people don't understand that many years ago, before the boom, we were only smoking cigars with 5 wrappers. It was Candela, mm-hmm. Indonesia, Connecticut, Cameroon.
Right.
And it was only 5 wrappers we were using, but now we have so many types of wrapper from so many different origins. So in my 53 years of smoking, I can tell you that in the last 10 or 12 years, cigars are more rich, more balanced, more flavorful, because we're working with different origins from a lot of different countries.
You have a lot more ingredients to draw from, makes a big difference.
A lot of people, when they see in the description of some cigar manufacturer says Peru, people say, really? They grow tobacco in Peru? In Peru, they grow a pelo de oro that's very good. It's very flavorful. You're not going to make a cigar 100% out of Peru because it's not going to work. But if you use like a Peruvian binder, or you could use in a blend, let's say 25% of a Viso or a Seco or a Ligero into it, it really brings out a lot of flavors that you would not pick up in different other cigars.
It's amazing. I guess necessity is the mother of invention, and after the boom, probably the reason that we started sourcing wrapper from so many other places is because we had to get it from somewhere. You know, there wasn't enough to go around because how much more demand there was back in those mid to late 90s times, you know?
Forgive my ignorance on the wrappers, too. We keep saying it's a Connecticut wrapper from here, Connecticut wrapper. Does that mean it all came from the same strain, the same seed?
Well, it's the same seed, but you have to understand that a lot of these companies like the Perez, the Olivas, the Plasencia, what they have been doing is, depending on the yield was, they're always doing a different type of hybrids and things like
evolving.
that. Oh, it's evolving.
Ever evolving, right. So it may have started from a Connecticut seed, and then they take it to Brazil, for instance, or
I'll give you an example. A lot of people always hear the word Criollo 98
Yeah.
and Corojo 99. Why was Corojo 99 and Criollo 98 not invented but created? Cuba in 1992 had blue mold that wiped out their whole crop. Then in 93 they had flooding. 94 again they had the blue mold. So a guy who's considered the godfather and the savior of black tobacco in the world, his name is Humelio Espino. He's the most updated geneticist in the world. He's retired now, but he was the head in Pinar del Rio of the Cuban Institute of Tobacco. So what was his challenge? Was to create a seed that would be resistant to blue mold and black shank. So that's when they came up with Criollo 98 and Corojo 99. So this guy is, you hear a lot of companies go out and say, well, we use a Cuban seed. Well, guess what, Sherlock? We all use a Cuban seed.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like if you take like Criollo Corojo 99 and you grow it in Dominican, let's say in Gurabo or Mao or La Canela or in Jacagua, even though it is the same seed, because of the pH, the magnesium, and the calcium that the soil has, it's going to taste different.
Right.
But like if you would grow Habano in Nicaragua, if you grow it in Condega, Estelí, Jalapa, or even in Ometepe, it's going to taste totally different. The characteristics, the leaf is going to look the same, but the characteristics is going to be totally different.
Well, because that seed's going to adapt to its surroundings and its soil as well.
We want to talk a bit about EP Carrillo, and we want to taste some Christmas ale from Bell's, and we're going to get to a couple of, I think, more than one whiskey today.
I'm not a big beer drinker, but this is not bad.
I tell you, this St. Arnold Christmas ale is one of our all-time favorites.
One of my absolute favorites there. Like I said, I've already gone through a keg of it.
Ian and I
did buy it when it came out right around October, late October. So we
consider ourselves pretty lucky to be based in Houston, and a big part of that is because of how vibrant and creative and wonderful the Houston craft beer scene is. It's really, I have friends in Austin, and I used to live in Austin, and they're all very proud of the Austin craft beer scene. I'm telling you, I put Houston right up there against it.
We got deep roots in craft beer because St. Arnold's been around for how long now?
It's the oldest craft brewery in Texas. I know that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's been around since early 90s. They've been, I remember when I first came into Houston professionally and working in Houston and stuff like that, it was everywhere. It's like you could find a St. Arnold Amber Ale everywhere, and brown ale on tap.
By the way, I had an Amber last night. Went to see Brian Setzer Orchestra at Jones Hall. It was fabulous.
Yeah, I bet.
That man can flat out play the guitar. Let me just tell you.
A little bit, huh?
He's amazing. But their selections they had in the concession area there at Jones Hall, it was the one that seemed the best, and hadn't had one in a long time. We've kind of gone on to the other St. Arnold offering.
Right.
Let me tell you, that's a delicious amber. I found myself in my brain comparing it to Fat Tire.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a go-to amber. If it's not better, it's just as good. I mean, it's a fantastic, and it's kind of it was their first big success at St. Arnold. Yeah. But I think there's been so much emphasis on all the other great stuff they do that you don't hear as much about it lately. But it's really good. So okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back in the next segment. I have some questions about EP Carrillo, and I want to pick your brain a little bit about what's happening at this company that is making you guys release so many amazing. I mean, the last 3 or 4 different EP Carrillo cigars I've smoked have been just fantastic, and I'm starting to feel like you guys are on a roll. So I want to find out, how does that happen?
I have the answer for you.
All right, good. We'll be back with segment number 2 and taste a little Bell's Christmas Ale. You are checking out Smoking and Toasting.
Smoking and Toasting.
Did you just
I totally did that by accident.
Hold on. But like I told you before, I got no problem drinking after you, sir.
Welcome back.
I totally did that.
Smoking and Toasting. Ian is bogarting the Bell's Christmas Ale.
There's a beer in front of me.
It's amazing. We are creatures of habit at the end of the day, are we not?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Welcome back at Smoking and Toasting. It's show number 117. We are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston. They're also in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth, which we still have to go visit. We have not made our Fort Worth road trip yet, so that's definitely on the docket for very, very soon. Coming up, a couple of exciting things. We are going to have in 2 weeks Ian's Crazy Beer Show on the program.
It's time to pull out some of the stuff that I've had in my fridge for a little while.
Well, see, what happens is when I let Ian bring the beers, we always open with the lightest beer, and the first one will be like 10%, and then it just goes up from there. And it's like,
in my
we gotta
defense,
have
the last
some
time
balance here,
the latest beer was 8%.
Okay, fair enough.
Percent.
Where did it go from there?
Well, I have some fun ones.
Okay, yes. So I haven't been allowing Ian to bring beers for the show for a while. So they've been collecting in his refrigerator. So we decided we'll just make a show of it. Ian's Crazy Beer Show.
We're gonna do that.
Yeah.
This one's totally different, in my opinion.
Boy, you're not kidding. I was just going to say that because I lit this during.
the beer.
Oh, talking about the beer. I was talking about the cigar. There was so much difference in the flavor profile, of
course,
from the first one. It's just it almost took me a moment to get used to this new flavor profile and kind of allow it to overtake the first one. But I'm enjoying it. Yeah. So, all right. So before we talk tobacco, let's taste this. Since Ian, you've already got a head start on us. You want to open with the comments there?
I don't know. I don't know why I pick a little bit more sweetness on this one, but maybe it's me.
This one does have a little sweetness, especially right in the middle of the flavor profile.
Boy, right
very
in the middle.
malty.
You're right.
And did you say this was a Scotch ale?
It is a Scotch ale, yes.
That they added spice to, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Spice. This is delicious. This is okay. So it says traditional Scotch ale is rich and malty with notes of caramel and warm finish. I agree with all of that. It's interesting because where the St. Arnold, which I'm very familiar with, the St. Arnold one is a very baking spice kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This one is more, like you said, it's very sweet, has that caramel kind of finish, has that Scotch ale kind of feel.
Maltier,
overall.
I think, too.
It's maltier overall.
There's a good body to it.
Yeah.
Goes great with that cigar, by the way. Even better than the St. Arnold, this one goes great with the cigar.
I'm loving it.
I don't know if I like it more than a St. Arnold as a Christmas ale, but I sure like it equally as well and as a different thing. And you know I love Scotch ale, so
Well, I tell you,
the flavor profile on this just does it for me.
Bell's Brewery, Comstock, Michigan, they have yet to let us down. They are just so consistent. And, I would draw a lot of comparison, actually, between them and St. Arnold. I think Bell's maybe has a larger national profile. Their Two-Hearted Ale IPA is generally in those lists at the end of the year when people talk about the best beer. And I think unfairly, St. Arnold does not get considered on the national scale as much. And it's probably because they're just available in Texas. It probably is that. But those of you who are...
Yeah, they don't get the national exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And Bell's, when we first started the show, I was bringing Bell's on because I have family up north, and anytime I go visit or they come visit, I'm like, bring me some Bell's. And they have such a great profile of beers. I'm so glad that they have distribution here now, which just happened, last year, I think,
yes,
right?
In the last year or so, yes.
It makes me so happy. The other one I found, too, that I like everything from their line is Cigar City. Now,
Cigar
you brought
City
that
in Florida.
Yeah, you brought that highlight that time.
Wow.
And then the Maduro,
yes, which is the
which
brown
you can
ale,
find now around here, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
and their brown ale, and it's almost like they designed that to go with cigars.
And
obviously, it's called Maduro. So.
Highlight, by the way, also makes those year-end best beer lists as well. It's a really well respected.
And I picked up
beer
one of
around
their
the country.
lagers that's outstanding as well. So
well, let's talk EP Carrillo just a little bit. First of all, Jose, what exactly does a vice president of a cigar company do? What's
a great question.
What's the job description? Because it's a great title, and obviously you're overseeing a great many things. But what?
Well, I oversee more than anything else is the sales team and also the international part. Like I go a lot to Europe, I go a lot to Canada. I work with the guys. I'm out every week doing sales events, blending seminars with the guys. Helping them out with any kind of problem they have, because you could be in any industry and it doesn't matter. Sometimes you're going to have people that, to be honest, it's hard to deal with. So sometimes the both of us got to go in there and.
I noticed you're looking at Alan when you talk about people that are hard to deal with.
Yeah.
No, that's just totally a joke.
I got to tell you something. I wish we would have more people like Alan. Alan is very passionate. He's very honest and very hardworking, and he has done an excellent job for us. Our territory is up in numbers that, if we were to say it, a lot of people wouldn't believe it, but he has done a phenomenal job. He's gotten us back into a lot of shops. We have created a great relationship with a lot of stores, and to be honest, he gets mostly all the credit. He's been good for us.
And it comes across with him, it's easier to believe a guy who believes his product. He's not just selling a product, he believes his product.
And I will say this, too. We've talked many times about how smoking and toasting directly impacts sales. This show does. And Alan has now, and we'll talk more about this in a few minutes, but he has now become the guest we've had on more than any other guest. And I'd say it's
what was
working
that? What was that other guy's name?
We'll get to that.
Chris something. Chris something.
But I just want to say, it does directly impact sales, because every time you're on the show, I wind up buying some of your cigars and give it over before I leave. So just for that reason alone, it impacts sales.
Hey, I'm sure Fred is going to love that.
Yeah. And we want to talk a little bit more about Maduro's as well in a few minutes. But tell me about what I would almost call, maybe it's not fair to say this, but I would almost call what you're going through at EP Carrillo right now, just I realize the company's relatively new, but it's almost like a renaissance. I mean, this brand is really beginning to catch fire, pardon the pun, you've had some amazing reviews. The quality and consistency of the cigars has been, I think, steadily climbing. What's going on? How are you guys pulling this off?
Well, it started a couple of years ago. Ernesto, of course, his La Gloria Cabana days, his dad had that, and then Ernesto took it over, and he came out with La Gloria Cabana and the Serie R, and it just blew up for him.
Is just such a great cigar.
And so then he got an offer from a very large company to buy his company, and he sold it. And then his son and his daughter said, "Dad, let's start another company. You've left that other company, and let's do it again. Let's do it. Let's be passionate about it." So he said, okay. So his son and his daughter joined him, Lisette and Ernesto III. And so it was truly a family endeavor. I mean, the whole company is family owned.
And how many years ago was that?
9 years ago, almost 10.
Ago. Okay.
Be 10 next year, early part of next year. And, in the beginning, I've always been a big supporter. I love this La Gloria. I smoked La Gloria way back when. And when I managed the shop that shall not be named, of course, one of the first lines that I brought in was EP Carrillo. Well, a couple of years, if you looked at EP Carrillo a couple of years, 3-4 years ago, except for some of the lines, the Core, the Cardinal, which are great cigars, they all looked the same. The bands were very similar. You didn't know what you were picking up. The boxes were a little different, but the bands were almost all the same. Well, Ernesto realized that was a problem. And the first thing he did is he rebanded everything.
And by the way, the bands on these are absolutely gorgeous.
They're super classy.
So we use the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy in Holland.
And also Cigar Rings in Santiago.
So we use top-notch people that do the banding, top-notch people that our box factory that does the boxes. Ernesto is very passionate about not just putting out a great tasting cigar, not just putting out a great looking cigar, but it being packaged correctly.
I think it's all a part of the experience,
exactly,
really, if you think about it. And it's one of the reasons I've got such a problem with this legislation, like what they passed in Canada now, where they have to be so bland with the packaging in the boxes. Because honestly, this old-timey Cuban-looking cigar art, that's not bringing any young people into the cigar store and making them buy cigars. It's not appealing to minors, but it is a part of the experience. When you buy a box of cigars, whether it's that style or a more modern style, but it's part of the whole experience, and what sort of shapes your mind about the cigar is the experience of how the box looks, how the individual cigar looks, the band, as well as then the construction.
We always taste with our eyes first.
Of course.
Like that's just the way it is.
It's happening in craft beer now. One of the things, because there's such a huge explosion of the different number of brands and the different number of lines from every brand, they're having to get really creative in how they package.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just, slap a label on it anymore.
And if you go into a humidor, your eyes are drawn to certain things. One of the things, so our flagship cigar, La Historia. If you look at that cigar, it's a beautiful box press, Mexican San Andrean wrapper. It's a 10-count box. The box is gorgeous, velvet-lined box. Box is beautiful. But the cigar itself, the band on it is very intricate. It's gorgeous. And the history just in that band is amazing. There's Ernesto's mom is on one side. Ernesto's daughter Lisette is on the other side. I mean, there's actually there's actually a thing that we did. There's a couple shops I've seen it in, but it's a large size of the band, and it actually uses little lines and it details everything, what all the history, and there's so much
I'll have to
to
look
it.
that up. I bet that's awesome.
And one of the things on it is, so he was asking his grandson, what do you think? And he said, oh, Dad, it's perfect. I mean, Grandpa, it's perfect, except it needs a dragon in it. So in that band, over on the right side next to Lisette, there is you really have to look for it, but there's a little bitty tiny red dragon.
That's so great.
That he put in it.
Fantastic.
But the band itself is full of history. Yeah.
Tell me about this particular cigar we're smoking right now. I know you guys started on yours a little bit earlier than I did because I was finishing up that first one, but this is just, I like to use the word blossoming as it smokes about an inch in. The flavor
I consider
really,
it a flavor bomb.
Yeah,
Yes.
the flavor really starts to come
Well,
home.
it's interesting when I first lit this cigar. A lot of cigars start off big and harsh on the first, and then they'll settle down. And this one actually started off a little muted flavor-wise, a little pepper on the tongue. A lot of cedar in this cigar I'm tasting, a lot of the woodsy kind of flavors.
Very
With a little
woodsy.
pepper on the tongue right off the bat, which the pepper kind of has, like you're talking about flavor bomb or blossoming, the pepper has spread throughout the palate and become a part of the flavor, but not an overwhelming part of the flavor. Now we have all these other things that are coming in that are incredibly
Now,
interesting.
you're a guy, I know this from, doing 117 episodes of the show with you, as well as the one or two other times that we've hung out and smoked together.
Maybe once, maybe twice.
But you're a guy that doesn't like it when they overdo the pepper.
No, if it's like there are some cigars that are just pepper bombs, and that's okay for what they are. I'm not generally in the mood for that. I want something with flavor. I don't mind a lot of spice, but I want spice with flavor. If it's very single dimension, that to me is not very good unless that's just what you want.
I like the pepper as long as it's not overdone, because my favorite thing about the cigars that I love the most is actually the flavor that it leaves in your mouth in the moments in between when you're actually puffing on the cigar. And pepper is a real... the pepper flavors are real good at keeping your tongue sort of tingling in a very pleasant way.
And then this has somewhere between like a black and a green pepper kind of
Agreed, yes.
flavor. Because it's
see,
not burning pepper. It's
right. And you see so many, going back to talking about the flavor that it leaves in your mouth between. I'll be in a shop, and I see guys... They're chain smoking that cigar. They're hot boxing it, they call it, with cigarettes. You're just constantly going. And you see them doing that with a cigar. You're not getting any flavor out. You can't be getting any flavor. Hey, enjoy your cigar the way you want to, but the way the cigars are made to be smoked, you're not getting the maximum amount of flavor, the maximum amount of nuance that you should get out of the cigar. You should let it rest. I read something somewhere, and it's maybe a little far from me, but that you should puff once a minute, maybe twice a minute.
Wow.
I've read that actually as well. I don't know that I gauge it. I pick it up and set it down. But sometimes if I find that I'm puffing a little, if I'm hot boxing it a little bit, I'll set it down. And just
You can
just
usually
let it-
tell the cigar will start burning a little hotter.
Yeah.
Yep.
The flavors are not quite as defined.
You
They're
get a little bit
more
of that
fiery.
metallic taste to it.
You
when
know,
you're
it's
going too fast.
it's important you guys mention the way people smoke. Unfortunately, the people who always complain the most about sourness and bitterness are the people that you ask them, how long does it take you to smoke a Robusto? And they say, I'll do it in 20 minutes flat. What people don't
not a race.
understand, it's the essential oils that the wrapper, the binder, and the filler have. So when you're blowing smokes fast, the essential oils are evaporating. It's like smoking paper. So the rule of thumb is, if you have 45 minutes to an hour, you pick a Robusto. If you have close to 2 hours, you're going to pick up a Toro 6x54 or a Churchill. If you want to smoke close to 3 hours, you pick up a 6.5 by 64, one of our inches. So I always tell people, before you light up a cigar, what's the first thing you have to do? You got to look at your watch. Say, how much time do I have? Because if you buy a Toro that's almost a 2-hour smoke, and you smoke it fast, you're not gonna pick up what the blender intended to
You're not gonna
really
pull the
make up
flavors,
with
yes.
it, because you're destroying it totally.
Yeah.
You're-
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I always say, you can't really hurry up and smoke a cigar. It's
That's
just it's just something you don't do. And so, like you're talking about, if you pick a cigar that's too large, you either have to sacrifice half that cigar, which
And leave it to rest, or smoke it half of it correctly. You can't do 120 where the speed limit is 60.
right.
well, you
that's
can.
a great way to
but
put
it's
it.
It's not going to be quite as good.
Well,
of an
I'm back to
experience.
like when I first walked in. I was like, you know what? I've got a half an hour. You have a cigar that fits that, and that was awesome. By the way, that was perfect.
Well, we talked about the race in cigars. The race actually goes the other way. We had this story on the show earlier in the year that an American actually had displaced the previous year's winner from the UK as the smoking champion, and he got the title because he smoked his cigar for the longest. In other words, he made it last the longest, not
Without relighting.
without relighting, not the opposite, not hotboxing it and taking it down too quick. So
I want to real quick give a little shout out to a friend of Jose's and mine that's he's watching this Gabby Caffey that owns Caffey Cigars.
Caffey
It's
Cigars.
a beautiful little boutique shop.
Love their cigars.
They have
And
some
we
great
love Howard,
stuff.
too.
Yeah, Howard's great.
He's so fun.
Howard's great.
Caffey's good people.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
It seems like there's a lot of mutual respect in the cigar industry. That obviously there's competition. When I go in and I'm going to buy 3 or 4 cigars, somebody's going to win that.
Sure.
But it seems like the competition in cigars is, I don't know, it's almost more familial.
It is.
in nature.
Jose and I were talking about something yesterday, something that happened at IPCPR, and I won't go into all the specifics of it, but this industry is so driven. Most of the guys that own these companies, they've got each other's cell phone numbers. The last time I picked up Ernesto at the airport, he's on the phone with Lito and Gomez that owns LFD,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and they talked for a half hour while I'm in the car, and I'm telling Ernesto things to tell Lito because I know him as well, and some of the deals that Ernesto's done. I watched one at IPCPR with one of our largest accounts, and the guy said, "Well, Ernesto, I'll do this, but you got to do this." Okay. It's a handshake.
Deal.
There's no contracts written.
Right.
There's no long-term, let's get the lawyers to get these 10-page contracts. It's a handshake deal between these guys because it's all about honor and integrity. And I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And you don't find that in a lot of industries
Yes.
like you do in the cigar
It
industry.
seems like in the craftier industries is where you find that when the people who do this actually have their hands on what they're doing. That makes all the difference.
'Cause I think craft beer is similar to that as well.
Craft beer is very similar like that. Craft spirits are like that. We've met a bunch of people who are independent craft spirits makers, and they know each other. They like each other. Great.
I grew up basically in the radio industry, and it was before 3 or 4 companies owned everything. But man, your guy across the street, that was your competition. You hated that guy. I mean, it was if you switched jobs later, you could become friends. But boy, while he was over there, he was your sworn enemy. And what's interesting was we didn't realize it at the time, but the big bosses of him and the big bosses of me, the people that owned the companies, they were out playing golf together, smoking cigars.
Yeah.
And having a steak dinner. But
Yeah.
talking about our industry, I've said this for many years. Our industry is the greatest industry in the world because of 3 things. You're not judged by the color of your skin. You're not judged by religious beliefs. And you're not judged whether you're smoking a $3 bundle cigar or you're smoking a $50 cigar. It doesn't really matter. We're all friends. We all get along. All sorts of types of people come into the cigar shop.
Cigar smokers are some of the most generous and fun people. Just because, anytime I go out and smoke a cigar, if I'm going somewhere that's not, just a cigar shop or somewhere that's very specific cigars, I always bring a couple extra. And I do that because I might smoke more than one, but also I'm sitting there smoking a cigar and people come up and they talk to me about it. I get a lot of people who are not necessarily cigar smokers or somewhat, like I smoke a cigar here and there, and I always hand out a cigar. I've had it where I've been at places and seen a guy smoking a cigar. "Oh, what are you smoking?" We start talking. He's like, "Here, have a cigar." I mean, and what's funny is, cigars are not cheap. Not at all, but people just hand them out. And
Oh,
you're
yeah.
right. Nobody
Without thinking about it,
judges.
yeah.
Nobody judges whether your cigar's $3
Here,
or
try
$15.
this. This is one of my
Try it,
favorites. Yeah.
Renaissance Festival. We were out there camping. We were out there for 4 days. And I bet during those 4 days, I gave away as many cigars as I smoked over the 4 days. Whenever me and Cam, that was on the show with me at Stogie's, we go out there, we camp, we take the families, we make a whole deal of it. And, we're inside the festival, we're smoking. And then when we're back out and we're camping and around the barbecue and the fire, we're smoking continuously. And people are, same thing. People are, hey, smoking cigar? Yeah. Come join us.
When my wife and I were first dating, I remember she's the one that introduced me to Ian because he was someone she'd known for years and worked in bands with and things like that. And I remember when she said, "Oh yeah, you got to come out and meet Ian and his at the time his girlfriend." Said, I remember very specifically, you'll like him. He's a cigar smoker. Like that was the only qualification
That's all we need.
That was needed. And it turns out we have other things in common too, but. The point is, if you just and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like it was immediately, I knew we'd have something in common that would make the conversation at least somewhat interesting. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Be back for segment number 3. We're going to try, Ian. I'm going to lay one on you here, buddy. I discovered.
I didn't even look at show notes, so this is all a surprise to me.
I discovered the Dogfish Head has a 75-minute IPA.
I saw that and haven't tried it.
Oh, you'll be trying it next. Well, I'll be trying it next.
I saw that. I have seen that. Sorry,
I saw it.
I done seen it.
I done seen it. So we'll be right back with that, plus more talk about EP Carrillo cigar tobacco, and we will wade very carefully into a short discussion about the pending regulations on the cigar industry. Coming up with my buddy here, Alan. Coming up next, it's Smoking and Toasting. Welcome back, my friends. It's Smoking and Toasting. It's show number 117, and still no one has put a stop to this madness.
It's funny you say that because we are actually smoking.
Yeah, and toasting.
And toasting.
Well, so before we talk about this particular beer, because this was an awesome.
To be honest, this is the one I like the best of them.
I'm not surprised, Jose. Do you have that container?
Oh yeah, we got to show this.
Alan Denney, who is. One of the reasons he's such a great guest on the show.
Alan Denney, friend of Smoking and Toasting.
Oh, yeah. One of the reasons he's a friend of the show is because he always brings something amazing. And he brought this from Southern Star Brewing in Conroe. It's a Buried Hatchet Stout variety pack.
It doesn't say anything on what the APV is on them at all.
Well, Buried Hatchet starts at 10%.
Yeah.
So
you have poured, and I'm going to show this to the camera, the Southern Star S'mores malt beverage with natural flavors added. This starts with Buried Hatchet, and I don't know what they added, but I know it's amazing. Ian, thoughts?
Up to now, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
And like I said before, I'm not a big beer drinker.
Well, Buried Hatchet is one that I go to. Now, you have to go to it with kid gloves because it is 10% to start, okay?
Right.
But it's so good, and anything they add to it, apparently, this is their s'mores version. Can I see that can for just a moment? This is their s'mores version, and this is malt beverage with natural flavors added. It just says s'mores. It's outstanding. It's sweet. It's delicious. The mouthfeel on it it's a nice full mouthfeel without being overly thick or anything like that. But it's enough to make you feel like, hey, I'm really got a lot of flavor going on here.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
There's
just
a lot going on.
Yeah.
It really does.
I got back into town from Dallas last week, and I went over to one of those nice big liquor stores, and I was just walking through the craft beer stuff looking for something. I saw that huge can, and when I first saw it, I thought, is that a giant Buried Hatchet? And turned, because I was buying it anyway.
It looks like a mini keg, actually.
Yeah, and so then my second thought was, oh, is this a little mini pony keg type deal?
Right.
Kind of like what Heineken does and some of those. And when I picked it up and it
rattled.
Variety pack, I was like, oh, I'm in. This is great.
At no point during that were you not buying it.
No.
Yeah,
it was in my hand. It was directly in the cart.
Southern Star up in Conroe, that's about an hour and 15 north of here. About 4 hours in traffic, but about an hour and 15 north if there's no traffic.
I call it South Dallas.
Man, they have a great lineup of beers. They have the Bombshell Blonde, which is a great blonde ale. They have their Pine Belt Pale Ale, which is a very hoppy.
That's very, very
almost
good beer.
an IPA, if you ask me.
Almost an IPA.
Then they have their IPA. I mean, they have such great beers, but their their biggest, best beer, as far as I'm concerned, is their Buried Hatchet. It is a stout that is so it is a chocolate flavor bomb of ridiculous proportions, and it goes with cigars in a most fantastic way. It goes with most things. Ice cream. You can make an ice cream float with that stuff, and it's unbelievable.
And I don't even have to ask, have you actually done that?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you have.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's funny that you guys are talking about IPAs and that, and to me, one of the most knowledgeable people about when it comes to Scotch and bourbon beer is my good friend Alan, which is a good friend of yours and of the show. But if you look at our industry, like when I started, what would you regularly see people, pairing up? They were talking about a rum and a Scotch, not even a good Scotch.
Right.
So if you look at the last 6 or 7 years, look at how the prices of Scotch and bourbon have gone up.
Yeah, big
but
time.
also, if you're on Instagram or on Facebook or, into those chat rooms, you see how much people are willing to go from a regular, I don't want to mention brands, beer that maybe is $2 and people buying stuff that's $5, $6, $10, and they are enjoying it because they're looking more towards the quality
That's right.
than the quantity.
That's
So
absolutely
if
right.
you look at our industry overall, because it's not only it's cigars, but you got to throw in the bourbon, you got to throw the beer,
that's right.
you got to throw the Scotch. So the pairings now, and I look at them on Instagram and people that inbox me on stuff. Like I said, sometimes I have a question about Scotch. I call him up right away. Like somebody gave me a bottle of something the other day. I didn't even know what the hell it was. I know it cost $189.
Well.
And I had to ask him about it, to him to tell me about the Scotch. Because even though I'm not a big drinker, but I look at the market, how it has evolved, with different beers and things like that. And, what you guys do is really bringing out the knowledge and making people go to the next level. Like, spend $2 or $3 more. It's worth it.
Yeah.
When-
Well, because smoking a cigar, much like drinking a craft beer and a lot of things in life, it's an experience. It's not just, I'm going to sit and smoke a cigar. It's, I want to sit and experience a cigar. You're paying money for this.
Right.
It's
Well,
not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's true with cigars. It's true with spirits. When probably no place for me is a better example than tequila, which is probably my favorite spirit at the end of the day. I love a wonderful tequila. And when I was in my 20s, it was all about quantity. It was about doing shots and hanging with your friends and throwing them back and, partying. But the older I get, I don't want that tequila I used to do shots with that requires salt and a lime to actually taste good. I want tequila that I can sit. It's more about
I don't
quality
think
than quantity.
we have never harmed a salt or a lime on this show.
That's right. That's right. Maybe in a cocktail would be the only
Maybe,
thing.
right?
Yeah, it would be the only thing. Well, you mentioned... sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing that pairs great with cigars. A lot of people don't think about it, but I think it's actually even more traditional than spirits and beers in general is coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite pairing.
Coffee.
We should really do a coffee show because
Man.
I am blissfully ignorant in the coffee world. But
I got turned. Manny over at El Cabano mentioned that one time. We had coffee with his cigars that day when we did our show over there, and it was so outstanding. When I went over to Ybor City, the culture there is so cigar and so interesting to me, and it's coffee shops and cigars everywhere. Coffee shops, everywhere, and all the coffee
Did you
shops.
go to Don Barco?
I did not.
They have. I was there on Thursday with Jeff, and they have a new owner now because Don had the shop for like 40 years. They make some of the best coffees there. So if you ever,
Nice.
there's two things
will
in
look that
Ybor
up.
City: to go to Don Barco shop and eat at Columbia.
Oh yeah, we absolutely did. and
Columbia
it was so
is
good.
it's a must.
I think we even post. I have a video from eating over there where they came out with the drinks and did the drinks and stuff at the table. It's unbelievable.
That
place is
restaurant's
so
100 years old.
Yeah.
Speaking of videos, by the way, next week as a part of the show, we'll be featuring the video that I shot at the Brewer's Table in Austin, a wonderful new restaurant in Austin that I not only had dinner at, but went back the next day to do a short segment and sample some of their homemade brews. Just absolutely
I can't wait to see that.
outstanding. So looking forward to that. We were mentioning Alan Denney on the show, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. Alan is now the owner of a very dubious distinction in our industry, and that is that he has now appeared more times on Smokin' and Toastin' than anyone else up until today's show. Look at taking that celebratory drag on the cigar. I love it. Up until today's show, it was a tie between you and our good friend Christopher Hart. But now you've inched past him. Do you have any thought why this became a deal? I'm not really sure because it's not like we're that discriminating, really, in terms. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had some great guests. Today's an amazing example of that. But we haven't been all that discriminating. We've let lots of wacky people on the show.
Last week, a friend of mine showed up to hang out at the show, and we just put him on.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
He was great. Yeah, he was. But Alan, do you have any thoughts or messages for Chris now that you have moved into the driver's seat?
I love you, buddy. No, I honestly don't know where. I was first. We talked about this before. I was first on with y'all at Whiskeys of the World.
Yes,
a couple years ago.
Right.
And you've had me recurring since then, and I love you guys, and I love the show. I love, when I'm on the road and y'all are doing one, and I'm making that 14-hour drive to St. Louis or that 10-hour drive to Oklahoma City, and y'all are on, I do book on tape a lot when I drive.
Right.
Jose and I love reading or listening to like John Grisham or James Patton criminal books.
Oh, yeah, those things are great.
But if I'm listening to one of those and it comes, because I have my notification when Smoking and Toasting comes on live, it comes up on my feed, and so I'll turn the book off, Bluetooth, and I'll listen to the show while I'm going up. Y'all have some great people on. The show is great.
We've been very
the whiskey
fortunate.
sniff was a blast.
That was so much fun.
We had thank you so much, by the way. That was so much fun.
I had a blast with that.
And,
thank y'all.
And we should, by the way, thank you again for providing cigars for the whiskey sniff. That was it would not have been the same without the cigars you provided.
And there were I met some great people at that I didn't know. With my deal with Chris and the Houston Whiskey Social, and that Chris was there as well, and Jorge and Jenny from Stogies that are big supporters. But it's been a blast meeting people coming on. Had y'all not had me on when I did cigars, wouldn't have met. Got to meet Adam, another great guy. Got to live vicariously and watch his wedding in Mexico.
That was
a couple
so much
of weeks
fun.
ago. So it's been great getting to know y'all and being on the show, and I enjoy it. And how the friendly rival with me and Chris started. I think it started at the 100th episode. We were talking about being on there,
yes.
and how much we had been on, and then it just kind of. It went from there, and then I was so distraught when y'all had a show and had both of us on it.
So you didn't have a chance to move ahead. Yeah, well.
Actually, I'm going to foment this because it's okay that you're one ahead, because that guarantees that we're going to have Chris Hart on a show coming up here in the near future.
You mentioned actually before the show that he's in Kentucky, right?
Right, yeah. They're doing some barrel picks up there. I know they did a Four Roses, and I can't remember what all that
And when he's watching this, I didn't know he was out of town. I was thoroughly expecting him to pod crash this episode.
Yes, yeah. I still think it could happen somehow.
If he hadn't been in Kentucky, I'm sure he would be walking through the front door of Maduro's
if he was to
right
call
now.
in right now, I would put the mic against my phone.
That would be hilarious. It wouldn't count, but that would be hilarious. We were even trying to. What was the show where a bunch of us called in? Was that the 50th?
It was the 50th show. We had people call in.
So we had called in, and I was joking because we were out at lunch. And I was like, no, it was the 100th. And I was like, well, but I was on the call in. And Chris was like, I did it too. I was like, son of a gun.
It was, it's been really fun doing this show. And what has amazed me is how much I've learned. I mean, I've never claimed to be an expert in any of the things we talk about.
Right.
I just enjoy them. But how much I've learned, things like even some of the things that Jose was talking about different leaves and wrappers and the blending of cigars. These are things you just don't quite get those by reading interviews.
No.
And I've read some great interviews in the cigar magazines with some of the rollers and the blenders who've made some of the iconic blends. But
I am so constantly just absolutely fascinated by blenders and how, because when you pick up a cigar, whatever that cigar is, whatever flavor that cigar is, your favorite one, like you said, every year is a different year for the crops. The tobacco leaves are going to have some differences in the flavor, and a blender takes all that and creates consistency out of that. Not only do they create brand new wonderful blends, and that's kind of like the rock star side of it, right? But the fact that you have blenders out there that can recreate out of an organic thing that changes from year to year the exact same or as close to it profile as possible is just unbelievable.
Sure.
There's so many variables.
Well, you look at Ernesto, and my opinion, he's one of the best in the world at doing it. And of course, his claim to fame is big ring gauge cigars, and that's, I mean, he no one was doing that. He did that.
I know that's not as hugely popular right now, but I love big ring gauge cigars. I really do.
Ian, you'd be surprised.
You'd be
Really?
surprised.
Is it becoming more popular?
No, it's the last 3 or 4 years. It's
blowing up.
I love that. See,
hopefully, maybe in the next segment, we'll get Fred on for a few minutes, but we were just talking about that this shop is really leaning towards big ring gauge. You take somewhere like Stogie's, and a lot of it bases itself on the owner of what the owner's smoking. Take Stogie's and Jorge. His favorite size is a Lancero.
Right, he
is the Lancero capital of the United States when it comes to
I don't doubt that,
how many shops. I don't know of any shop in the country that has as many personal blend Lanceros that are blended for that shop as
right.
Stogie's does. That's his favorite size. Jenny loves Lanceros. They like a little bit smaller ring gauge. Of course, they do well with bigger ring gauge, don't get me wrong. But you've got Fred, his favorite is a bigger ring gauge cigar. Ringmaster is one of his favorite cigars. And so you've got guys that come in and go, oh, Fred, what are you smoking? Oh, I'm smoking a Ringmaster. Oh, how is it? Man, it's great. I love the cigar. Oh, well, I'll get one.
Yep.
Right.
They want to sit down and have a conversation with the owner. It's an experience. And, I'll try what you're trying. Hey, this is a good cigar. And they start smoking.
And that's one of the wonderful things about the brick and mortar side of the cigar industry is because these shops you can walk in. I love, Ian talks about this all the time, the ability to walk in and go, what am I smoking today? And
I do. I put it right out there.
And have somebody just
recommend
say,
something.
well, have you tried this? Blah, blah, blah. And just move right to something that's maybe not on your radar. And I love that. But that's got to be absolutely huge for guys like you guys who are in the business of selling cigars. That's why you've got to really cultivate these retail relationships and make sure these people know about your cigars and know the stories behind them too. And I think that's important.
For us, the big ring gauge, like I said before, it's Ernesto.
Yeah.
One of the problems, the biggest and only real problem I have with big ring gauge cigars is sometimes I look at my humidor and I think, I've got 45 minutes.
Right.
And I look at my humidor and I'm like, I don't know if I have a 45-minute cigar.
Yeah, I know.
Everything's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
I have to intentionally, like when I walk into a shop, recently especially, I've been intentionally going, okay, I'm going to buy a couple smaller ring gauge choices just to toss in there.
Yep, that's right. I wanted to draw our attention to this IPA because you poured it and you've already been sampling it. I haven't tried it yet. This is the Dogfish Head 75-minute, and you might grab the bottle, Ian, because I think there's some description on this. But one of the things that always worries me when I'm having a great cigar, and I haven't tasted this yet, so I don't know. I love IPAs. It's actually my personal favorite style when it comes to craft beer, but so many of them do not go well with cigars because they have a tendency to have a little more hoppiness, bitterness to the flavor profile that doesn't always mesh the way something like the Southern Star S'mores did, for example.
Yeah,
you've had the first of this.
IPAs can fight cigars a lot of times just due to the inherent style,
right.
But I will tell you, you got to leave it to Dogfish Head to bring up something. Like, first off, I think that their 90-minute IPA might be like one of the absolute pinnacles of the style. Like, that is such a good IPA overall. And it will go well with certain cigars. It's not with everyone.
I don't want to sound ignorant. Could you, because I'm not, like I said, big. Can you explain this thing, in a small capsule, 90-minute? What does that mean?
It's the name of their cigar. It's the name of their beer. They call it they have a 60-minute IPA, which I think is right at 6%. I think is how that started. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there. And then their 90-minute was a 9% IPA.
Okay, so the minutes is related to the.
In this particular case, I think it's where and
I think that's just what they decided to call it.
They're the only ones that I know of that describe their beers in minutes.
Right, because they
and it's
also
just these
have
particular
they also
ones.
have a 120-minute IPA, which is amazing, but it usually tops out at about 18% instead of a
See, I think of it.
12%, you know.
I think of it more as the amount of time you should take to drink a bottle. Because
that-
if you're drinking 120, you may want to stretch that baby over. A couple
So
of
they
hours.
they just came out with the 75-minute IPA, and it
and
says
it's a limited. I think
it says off-centered art series. And of course, the artwork on the front is fantastic. It has a mad scientist with some hops and some 60-minute bottle of 60-minute IPA and some hops and it looks like a bottle of maple syrup. And it says on the side, ale brewed with maple syrup. So they
Well-
obviously added maple syrup to this. They came up with an IPA that is sweet.
Yeah,
This thing.
that's very unusual too.
Well, not only are their IPAs more balanced and malty than most IPAs generally, but this has that maltiness, but then it has that super sweet finish with a little snap from that IPA hoppiness that you expect. It's an interesting blend. This is a very intricate beer, if you ask me.
And I will say, while it may not match up as well as the Southern Star did, the maple and the maltiness
yeah.
is keeping it from fighting with the cigar.
Right.
And it's actually going rather well together.
Yeah, because a lot of times you get the bitter finish on an IPA that will just fight that cigar.
And I often
profile.
save my IPAs
Yeah.
for when I'm not smoking, so I can enjoy that flavor profile without it being something that will fight the cigar.
I really think that every time y'all have me on, y'all try and find the funkiest IPAs y'all can, because they both
you're not
know
you're not
I'm-
an IPA
I'm
guy.
not an IPA guy. I'm not an IPA. I'll try it. I'll try every one they give me. There was one we had. I couldn't remember. We were doing some of the Oktoberfests at when we were in the studio. It was me and Chris, and there was one. It was okay. It wasn't bad. I was like, I could drink this, but in general, I'm just not a fan. And I honestly think part of it is most of the time when I'm drinking beer, I'm smoking.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that
And
probably has
if
a lot to do
I
with it.
was because there is one IPA that I really enjoy. It's the only one that I know of myself that if I'm in the grocery store and I'm looking, I may buy it, and it's more cowbell.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I enjoy that beer.
Now,
From Carbach.
now, if you pair a good IPA with a good rye whiskey, that will go generally.
Oh,
with
you
a
mean
cigar.
pour the rye whiskey into
No,
it
no,
so
no,
I kill the
no,
taste?
no.
Just drink them. Yeah.
This is not. That's not a Boilermaker. That'd be. I don't know what
I
you
don't know
call
what
it.
that'd be.
Destruction.
It's a crock pot or
I think
something.
we're
I
going to
don't know
call
what
that.
it
We're going to call that an Uber.
is.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, because an IPA and a good rye whiskey pair really well together. And then a cigar with that, something about the whiskey negates a lot of the bitterness from the IPA, and the cigar goes well with it. Of course,
Well-
cigars and whiskeys go great
But
together.
you know, one of the things that I always talk about this when I'm doing seminars, that a lot of people, unfortunately, are very confused on pairings. Because at the end of the day, we all have a tolerance scale that goes from 1 to 10. I could go to the factory 7 o'clock in the morning after coffee and toast and smoke a full-body cigar, be at ease. There's people that go out, have a 22-ounce steak with 2 big Idaho potatoes and a half a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. You give them a mild cigar, they go, oh, it's too strong. No, the cigar is not too strong. What you have is a very low tolerance scale. So sometimes at the shops, I see people reading a review from a magazine, and the review says the cigar was medium to full. It had hints of almond and sweet notes of whatever and this and that. So they try to smoke the cigar and try to pick up the same thing. It's never going to happen.
Right.
Because taste is subjective. What you eat, what you smoke, if it's hot, if it's cold, if you're sitting next to an asshole, everything can affect the cigar.
Oh, that's absolutely right. I'm actually surprised sometimes that you and I will pull the same flavors out of a cigar, because it is such a subjective thing.
It is.
And I talk about this on the show from time to time. I love sometimes reading some of these online cigar reviews where they're so detailed about the flavors they're pulling out. You know, roasted. It has flavors of roasted lychee nuts dipped in hot chocolate. What? You know, what are you talking about? It's just, you know, sometimes it's just.
It's a little
just
over the top,
A little
yeah.
over the
The
top.
best one I've ever heard, I can't remember who posted it, was cigar was meat in the food, bada bing, bada bang, and on the finish, it had a hint of blueberry muffin.
Not just blueberries. Blueberry muffin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've pulled some strange flavors out of cigars, and I try to just zen it. I'll sit there and smoke a cigar, and I don't try to force flavor ideas into my head. I go, what am I tasting? And sometimes I'm like, there's something I just don't know what it is. But I've had cigars where I taste citrus, which is a little strange to me, coming out of a cigar, but, it's there. The cigar that I had right before this had a tanginess to it that was a little bit like that, and a lot of cedar, which I really thought was fun in the flavor. And I'm not sure if that had something to do with what I'm drinking or what I ate before I got here. I mean, it all has something to do with it.
You mentioned whiskey a few moments ago. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we actually are going to try a couple of different whiskeys. I've brought with me today a Jefferson's Reserve Twin Oak Custom Barrel. Nice. It's a straight bourbon whiskey. It's actually a new release from Jefferson's Reserve. Very excited about trying that. But then Alan, who can not stand to be one-upped, has gone totally off the deep end with one of the more rare bottles of Glenmorangie I've ever seen.
He went totally Chris Hart on this and got something for us to try that you can't get.
Yeah, not only can you not get it, but you can't get it on this side of the globe. So you might get it if you're in Dubai? Did you say?
Yeah, Middle East. Somewhere over there.
So tell us real quick about this Glenmorangie.
So it's the Glenmorangie, the Legend series.
Okay.
They do these legends, and they only release them for international travel, and they're only available in certain duty-free shops in certain airports. So you can get this one at that one, this one at that one, this one at that one, and this one came from the other side.
Oh, I'm going to have to have a conversation with
And it's funny that you mentioned that because in September when I go home, I always go through Istanbul, Ankara, that has one of the best duty-frees. That duty-free and the one in London. If you want to really find rare stuff, and I saw it, and I can't remember the price of it, and I said, it's a little bit out of my league.
Well, we'll try this. I don't know what the price is on this. We'll try this as well as the Jefferson's Reserve coming up in our next segment. It's Smoking and Toasting. Thank you for watching.
Awesome.
All right, welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting. We are live at Maduro's in what I consider to now be, by the way, the cigar capital of Texas, League City, Texas.
Yeah, this place is crazy.
It's like nuts how much cigar activity there is here, and more to come. I understand.
There's a lot.
We hadn't talked a lot about this lounge in particular, other than the fact that it's formerly the man cave. And this place has such a great feel.
Well, let's have Fred on for just a. Hey, Fred.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, I'll abdicate my position for a minute.
Yeah. Well,
here,
Fred, come over here.
Or we could fit him in.
What I love about this place is that when the man cave disappeared for all of the dubious reasons that it disappeared, Fred was able to come in, sort of salvage the ashes, so to speak, and create what is already, I think, doing even better than the man cave ever did.
Yeah. So I'll give a little background, and a little Fred talk for a minute, and the reason Jose's in town is. We set up a couple of months ago. I set up a Christmas party with Fred. This is my second event doing with him. When the predecessors went out of business well over a year ago, this was an empty shell. The furniture was here, the humidor was there, the televisions were hanging, but it was nothing. There were, 10 cigars on the shelf, and Fred is a cigar connoisseur, big ring gauge guy. As a matter of fact, he's smoking a Ringmaster right now. And Fred talked it over with the landlord, and he bought the building, and this is not the man cave. This is Maduro Cigar Lounge, and Fred has turned this into one of the premium shops in Houston. He is doing in sales, customers, support what the man cave was doing in its prime, and he's only been open a year. The Christmas party is not only his Christmas party, but his 1-year anniversary party.
Congratulations!
I think you opened the Monday after Thanksgiving last year.
That's right.
I can't remember what the day was, but it was that
26.
And so he has been. I consider Fred a good friend. He was a customer here. He was a VIP member, and it was funny to come in and he was here every Sunday watching football with friends, and then for him, I got a phone call one day asking if I could give him a hand with something, and I had no idea what. And then I'll let Fred kind of talk a little bit about Maduros and.
Yeah, Maduro's was kind of my brand. Like I said, I was an avid smoker at the Man Cave back in the day, and I give props to they did a great job with designing this place. We kind of came in with an idea to cater to the suburban cigar smoker. So our whole business concept was to bring in, first of all, what the people in this area like to smoke.
Right.
And that kind of worked for us. And like I say, Alan was a big influence on getting cigar brands. Of course, EPC was the first brand we brought in.
It's a great product.
This is your home turf.
It's my home store.
Yes, EPC was the first brand we brought in, and it kind of took off from there. And then basically, we've been having a really good time. We've been having a good time, got great clientele, and got a lot of great vendors stop in, and had a good time doing it.
Is this something? Is owning a cigar lounge something that you thought about a lot before? Is this like a dream of yours, or is this something that just kind of came up and you said, "I'm going to dive in"?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm an owner of another company, but I'm an average cigar smoker. I'm not a connoisseur by any means, but I love cigars and I love the place. And I was listening to people talk about, hey, I hope this place stay around for a while. So when it happened to go out of business, I came up with an idea to keep it going.
Is it harder, you think, to launch a successful cigar store and lounge on the ashes of a one that ultimately wasn't successful, or do you think it might have been easier if you were, doing it in a brand new location somewhere?
Well, it came with a lot of worries, of course. I mean, everybody wants to know why. What
happened,
right?
Yeah,
and practically, I didn't really know the whole story and what happened. But
maybe that's best.
Right. So we basically built the concept on some really good relationships.
Relationships are everything in this business.
Yeah.
I keep saying it over and over. It really is what it's about. I mean,
It's all
obviously,
about that.
you got to have quality tobacco,
Right.
but relationships are what keeps the whole lifeblood of it moving, and it's a really, really huge thing. And I think that's why you've done so well in your first year.
Thank you.
Is
And
because
it's funny that you mentioned that, because when I met Fred for the first time, we kind of hit it off. And the first thing I told, and I tell a lot of people, what do you sell in a cigar shop? First thing that comes out of their mouth is cigars. And I go like, strike one. Then they go like, what? Cutters, humidors, matches? Strike two. And I don't let them strike out. So I tell them, what you sell is an experience.
that's right.
That's right.
And we were talking about that
That's
today.
right. That's right.
And that's why you've got to have, and you guys have a very well-apportioned, well-stocked humidor. But that's part of the experience. You go in a place and the humidor's too small, you may pick up a couple of things to smoke, but it's not the same as that feeling of walking around, taking a look at what's there, browsing through. I've said this before. I'll rush in and out of a department store if I need to buy a pair of shoes or something like that. I'll do it as quickly as I can. The only place where I enjoy the process of shopping is in a cigar store. I love wandering aimlessly through the humidor. I'm the guy that's in there for so long that you guys start worrying, what's he doing in there? Like,
I think cigar shop culture has changed a little bit in the last 10 years. When I first started, I mentioned earlier, I started smoking cigars in roughly 2005. And it was intimidating. I'd walk into a cigar shop, and there are a few around where you walk in, and they have a private club, but you don't know anything about it. And, so I ended up going in and grabbing cigars and leaving and smoking them on my own. Never stopping and smoking cigars. When you have a place like this where you walk in, and this whole place is a lounge, and then there's a humidor. Right. A lot of places aren't like that. A lot of places are a shop with a humidor, and then they have a private lounge in the back, which is a nice thing if you know stuff about it, or if you're privy to it, or if you can afford it, those kind of things. But you walk into a place like this, and I see more and more shops becoming like this, where you walk into a lounge and you buy a cigar. And one of the interesting things, if you're watching this and you're ever wondering, how do I get into that culture without feeling weird or awkward, okay? Because it's, we're all guys. We don't want to ask, The thing is, you walk into a cigar shop, light up a cigar, and that's all it takes. People will start talking to you. You're chatting. Next thing you know, you're having a seat. You talk to the guy next to you. if a guy's sitting there with headphones on, obviously he wants to do his own work, but the guy across from you probably doesn't have headphones on. He'll start, hey, what are you smoking today? It starts rolling like that, and this place has a great feel to it like that.
Thank you.
It's funny. I've been in here and I've watched Mickey, who one of his employees, and I've seen Fred do it. And you'll see a guy walk in, and you can tell it's his first time. He's looking around, looking at the TVs. Goes in, he gets a cigar, he comes up, he's checking, fixing to check out. And the first thing they ask is, oh, are you a member? Well, they know the guy's not a member. But it's, no, I'm not. Oh, let me show you the members lounge. And then they'll take them over, show them the members lounge. And when you see the private members lounge, then you've got the public lounge. It's something you want to be a part of. They, everybody's welcome here, and they hospitality to everybody. It doesn't matter if it's your first time in the shop or if you've been coming here since the day you opened the door. It's the hospitality in this shop is just amazing.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on good customer service, and everyone feels welcome, whether you're a first-time smoker or you've been smoking all your life. We pride ourselves on making you feel comfortable and learning more about cigars and enjoying the whole ambiance.
I'm guessing, too, that this time of year you get customers who are not smokers, who are coming in because they have a smoker on their Christmas list, and they're looking to find gifts, and those people are the ones that need help the most, right? Because they come in and they don't know what they're looking for, may not even know what the person on their gift list likes to smoke.
Especially the women.
Yeah, especially women. That's absolutely true. They just know that their husband or uncle or brother or whoever they're buying for likes cigars, and they need help. That would have to be one of the more fun challenges.
I'm sorry, do you
think.
have any It's a Boys?
Yeah, right. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, actually.
No, but he does have some really nice gift packs made up that are amazing.
That's really smart, too.
Yeah.
That's really smart. I want to mention, as Ian is pouring the Jefferson's Reserve, because we have two whiskeys to taste in this segment, that during the break, Alan actually opened up another can from his amazing gift pack of Southern Star, and this one is a red velvet cake. And I just have to say, if you see one of these gift packs on the shelf somewhere, I just recommend that you leave it right where it is and call me so I can go and buy it.
And you call me. I'll go. If it's in the Clear Lake area, I'll go grab it for us.
Man, no, buy it if you see it, because this is just absolutely tremendous, and it does, in fact, actually taste like red velvet cake.
Yeah,
I can even taste the cream cheese
The nose
frosting
on this, like you get this even close to your face. Like the s'mores didn't have as much aromatic to it as this. This you even get it close to your face, and you can smell
This
it.
is the sweetest of all the ones, I would say.
It really is even sweeter, I think, than the s'mores was. Yeah.
So one of the things we were going to mention was, I don't know if you want to bring it up, if you want to talk about the whiskey, but regulations.
Well, yeah. So let's do this. Let's taste the whiskey, and then once we got a little whiskey in us, we'll talk regulations. I wanted to just mention too that we've now lit another cigar, and this one is yet again a completely different flavor profile from the last two. Tell me about the Reserva.
So this is a New Wave Reserva. It again, like the Alencos, comes out of our Elite series, so it's a little bit closer to Ernesto's heart. A little bit more premium tobacco in it. So it uses the same Connecticut wrapper that's on our New Wave Connecticut cigar, which is a very nice, light morning cigar. It's great with a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, not too harsh.
I can see this with coffee all day long.
But this uses a Connecticut broadleaf Maduro for the binder. So instead of that just kind of light Connecticutness that you get some of that natural sweetness to it. It's got a little more body to it, a lot more flavor to it.
It really does.
This has a lot of toast kind of flavors in it, if that makes any sense. Like
this, for me, this cigar pairs better with beer and coffee, where the one we were smoking before I think would have been better with the whiskey. That's my opinion.
maybe we went in the wrong order. But
speaking of whiskey,
I agree, Ian. Although I would say the toastiness is. It's sort of like a slice of sunbeam bread toasted in a skillet, butter only on one side.
Yes, with a light coat of cinnamon on the dry pan only while it was heated.
That's exactly right. So
that's total
your
craziness.
ridiculous cigar review of the day.
Hold on. Cooked in the oven, not broiled.
Oh, okay, there you
Not
go.
broiled.
Not broiled. There you go. That's perfect.
Very specifically.
So this is the finish on this. When it first hit my tongue, I was like, but the finish on this is phenomenal.
So this
you're
is
talking about
sweet.
the Jeffersons
Yes.
now, right?
This is sweet. You were
Yeah.
talking about the sweet beer earlier. This is incredibly sweet, yet it has a strong bite and finish to it in a very pleasant way, but it's definitely there.
Well-
and it's interesting that it leaves a lingering heat.
Yes,
and a
the heat
lingering
stays with you.
Right, and the sweetness a bit too goes
Yeah.
great with the
Yeah.
cigar.
There, you know,
It's me all over the palate.
there may be some people that when they drink this, they don't like. There's a little more burn on the back, which I like. But as Chris and I have talked about numerous times, whiskey's a journey.
Yeah.
I love, 5 years ago, I probably would, I don't like the burn on the back. Now, the more burn, the better for me. So, but I love this.
Well, and generally when I drink whiskey, I always try it neat first, but I will almost always add an ice cube, and then because what I like to do is, and I've said this on a show so many times, but this is my journey, is I like to add that ice cube, and then as the whiskey gets cold, you get a lot of the brighter flavors in there that happen, and a lot of times that becomes like fruit. Sometimes, depending on what you have, like to me, if you put Glenlivet in a glass with a thing of ice, it tastes like apples, like very much like apples. But as that ice melts in, and you start getting a little more water into the whiskey, you start to dilute it a little bit. You open up a lot of flavors, and then sip through it as it warms up again. And you start getting all the darker flavors back into it again, and it's this whole journey that happens within one glass of whiskey. It's fantastic.
Fred, are you a whiskey guy?
I'm starting to be.
Yeah.
Not a connoisseur, but I love it. But I'm kind of with him. I drink all mine with an ice cube.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me learn more about.
Whiskey. I certainly had plenty of different kinds of whiskey before we started this show, but it was probably the spirit with which I was the least familiar, unless you want to count something like Malort. And we have to reference Malort at least once per show. But it's a real journey beginning to understand the flavors and the complexities, and I've had such a blast learning whiskey and kind of like your experience with rum.
Yeah, well,
after
you've
starting
turned me
the show.
on to a lot of rum that I never knew existed.
Yeah, I'm just a huge fan of rum.
and
as well.
rum in Houston it's coming up. It's
Yeah, it
not,
really is.
It's not the Captain Morgans and Bacardi anymore. Some of the stuff that's coming into Houston that's not even available in Texas, but that is coming in that's getting some allocation in Houston. And it may only be a couple of cases. It may be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but it's the rum journey is getting great here in Houston.
Well, talking about rum, I think that one of the things I know a little bit about is rum because when I was very young, I worked with Brugal, which is the second oldest company in Dominican Republic, 1888. Don Andres Brugal started it, and so people ask me, after coffee, what's your favorite pairing? I would say it's single malt depending, but rum. But to me, good rum is like Zacapa 23.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Plantation 20, phenomenal.
Plantation.
I
makes
like
some
Brugal,
great
Barcel-
rums that are
Barcelona.
so inexpensive.
It's
I'll
incredible.
tell you a good rum, and I like it even more than the 12 is the Flor de Caña 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Flor de Caña 25, that is really, it's pricey, but it's worth it. Diplomatico, I used to like it. I think it's gotten too sweet. I like Saya, Safra, and Granada has some great rums. There's even a rum from Panama called Abuelo that means grandfather, the 12-year-old. It's
You brought some of that on, didn't you?
Yes.
the Abuelo it's pretty good. So I agree with Alan that rum has become a lot, and people have gotten away from the old traditional rum names, and people have just the same thing with Scotch and bourbon have just moved
Right.
to the next level, looking more at quality and not quantity.
We had a couple of shows ago, show number 115, Adam, our producer, who's on the Wheels of Steel, we were in Mexico for his wedding and spending some family time down there, and we managed to get a bottle of the Havana Club, and not the traditional Havana Club 7, which is wonderful, and we've had on the show before, and I got a couple of bottles of that at duty free on the way home.
Okay.
But we found a Havana Club triple barrel aged. and tried it. Well, we did more than try it.
None of that came home.
None of that came home. That may have been one of the finest rums I've ever had. If anything, it's a tie with Chris Hart's British Royal Navy rum that he brought onto the show, which is just a completely different animal, by the way.
And we'll have that at the social again this year. So if anybody that missed it last year, we'll have it again this year.
Houston Whiskey Social is such an event.
Yes.
HoustonWhiskeySocial.com.
.com. The Houston Whiskey
tickets are
Social.
already available.
Yeah,
for
they're
next year.
available. I think we just finished the early bird, but tickets are still available. So we changed it this year.
You're doing a different time this year. Different,
March 30th this year. So it's going to be a lot cooler. It's not going to be 99 degrees in the shade.
Outdoors,
It'll be wonderful. So, we'd love to have everybody out. If you didn't get to make it this year and you want to try that rum, it's the old rum from the British Navy that they used to give out as rations.
It's
and
life changing.
We were able to get a couple of casks. Chris was able to get a couple of casks, I should say, because he had to pay for it. But we'll have it available again.
Well, I'm going to give the Jeffersons here a pretty strong thumbs up.
Agreed.
I'm a fan. This is something I'm looking forward to enjoying more of with maybe trying it with a few different cigars.
One of the fun things about doing this on the show is we get to try so many different things, but I think one of the benefits, listener-wise, and because we've all stood in the aisle scratching our heads before going, do I really want to spend this much and try this if I don't know if I like it? Is if you hear a description you like of something here, you can just go, hey, that either fits what I like or that's not something I'd want. That's kind of a fun thing in and of itself.
And I'll be honest, there are some shows out there that are maybe sponsored by XYZ or ABC or whatever, and so they try not to talk badly about certain products. But one of the things,
understand it's a sponsor,
exactly. But one of the things I love about coming on with y'all is B&B is y'all's sponsor, which they cover everybody. They have great food, great drinks. So if something comes on, everybody knows I'm not an IPA fan. If I say, man, this is not, I don't have to go, Cruz, can I talk bad about this beer?
Exactly.
It doesn't meet my palate. I'm not the guy for this. Exactly. So you can say, hey, I don't like this.
Yep. Right. And we have from time to time talked about, although, in general, we like most of the things that we're trying because let's face it, it's spirits and beer and cigars. But if we get something that's not to our palate, we'll absolutely talk about it.
There's funny moments on the show where we have, I really don't like something and he really does, or stuff like that. And there's no punches pulled. I'm not trying to trash a company because I don't like a product they make, unless it's just a bad product. Because sometimes there's stuff that's really high quality that isn't my palate, and that's okay too.
And listen, I'm the guy who's reviewed a cigar on the show that I described as having the wonderful aroma of burning paper. These things do happen.
As long as that wasn't my cigar.
It wasn't one of yours.
Because I think it was the 100th, y'all got to smoke Ringmaster.
Oh, my God,
and y'all enjoyed it, but then we got to smoke it again, and because I think I brought it to Stogie's, and y'all got to, and so
I love that cigar. I love how smoky. This cigar has a lot of smoke to it as well. I love the big smoky cigars.
A big mouthful of smoke.
It's not that I don't like cigars that aren't big and smoky, but that big smokiness is fun. As you saw me earlier trying to blow smoke rings, which I'm not fantastic at. But that's just fun.
So one of the things we were talking about, and I asked Fred about, because we were talking about this earlier, is he's seen a lot of big ring gauge cigars. A lot of people are buying big ring gauge here, and that's increasing. And that, like we said earlier, that is becoming a thing. Now, it helps that he's smoking Ringmaster there, right?
No sponsor plug there. But you genuinely do like that cigar.
I do. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to have an experience, like I said, at the show in July, and I fell in love with it. And even though there's a variety of cigars, I'm kind of a person that sticks to one for a while and then kind of move on.
San Cristobal. You were smoking San Cristobals forever.
Right. So, right now it's my go-to for sure.
Yeah, I love trying different things, but I will always have 3 or 4 go-tos that I like to smoke on a very regular basis. Yep. And generally, for me, those will be cigars in that $6 to $8 range, because let's face it, if you're the person who can have a go-to cigar that's $20, I'd love to meet you and have you invite me over.
Let's hang out.
But no, it's something more in that range is generally acceptable. But I like to try everything. It's part of the fun.
I'll put it out there. Ringmaster is not in that price range. Ringmaster is a little bit more expensive, but it is a premium cigar of our inch line. It's more expensive than any of our other inch cigars, but the quality, the flavor of that cigar is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, Ian talked about being a big ring gauge guy. I'm generally more comfortable about here in the 44 to 50 range. But the Ringmaster, what I love about it is just absolutely packed with flavor.
Yes.
Instead of
smoke like a big cigar.
that's right. It doesn't become one dimensional. It keeps the flavor developing and evolving, and it's really a wonderful thing. Okay, so what I want to do, we're going to take a quick break and come back for our final segment. In that final segment, we're going to taste the whiskey from Dubai. We have at least one more beer to try. And we also are going to talk cigar regulations.
Awesome.
We haven't gone there yet. So that'll all be coming up. Plus a few more questions for Jose Blanco from EP Carrillo. We are smoking and toasting, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting. This is the radio program that is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. We are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. We are live today at Maduro's Cigar Lounge and Cigar Shop in League City, Texas, and we are having a wonderful time with Alan Denney and Jose Blanco from EP Carrillo. And I'll just say, Chris Hart is going to have to go some to top today's show. Because this is
There's that.
this
I want
is
to
Amazing.
I want to take just a second and give a shout out to a couple friends that I always see. Like, we see if you're doing comments on here, sometimes you log on, we're watching on here, so share out. We love that. But I want to give a shout out to Skeet and Bo. These guys, every time I look at my phone when we're doing this show, they're always watching the show,
Thank
man.
you,
And I
guys.
just love that. Thank you for the support.
We appreciate it. We really do.
We even have a good dear friend from Australia, Bruce Lewis,
Oh, nice.
tuning in.
Nice.
Awesome.
Bruce, hope all is well, brother.
We have just increased our Australia numbers by 1, so that's good.
Awesome. Share it out, please.
Yeah, that's right. No, we seriously, we want to thank all of you that support the show and that check us out on a regular basis. We just do this really as a labor of love. It's just something Ian and I enjoy, and we've had 117 episodes of goodness, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
That, of course, includes the famous missing episode.
The
which
famous missing
we'll have to
episode.
resurrect someday. That was the episode entitled "Cruise is Bitter." More bitter than a bad IPA. Cruise is more bitter than a bad IPA. It was when we had to change the name of the show, which ultimately was a wonderful thing.
Bro, you know what this smells like?
Yeah.
So let's talk about what he just poured. Because
Okay, so my mom loves these things. They're chocolate orange slices that you get.
At Christmas,
You know what I'm talking about. You
And
always
that's
see them
where
at
you
Christmas.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what this is. It's
You know what-
chocolate orange from
you know-
Southern
Pick
Star.
up orange right away.
I had to look over, like I smelled this and I had to look over. I was like, "Is that what I think it is?" It is literally the smells. Now, I haven't tried it yet.
Oh
but
yeah,
this
it smells
exactly
exactly
like those
chocolate
candies.
orange.
as a matter of fact, I just bought a couple of those. You take them, and while they're still in the foil, you actually hit them because it's a solid piece. And you hit the orange on a table, and it breaks, so each of the pieces look like a little orange slice.
Right,
They actually
right.
have ridges in them.
This is not information you get on the other shows. I'll just point this out. This is important information and things that may come up in Trivial Pursuit, or if you buy candied orange slices, and that's about it.
Wow.
But it's awesome, and this
This-
is a delicious beer. Once again, Southern Star,
Yep.
big time.
Why
Ian?
haven't they been on the show before?
What's odd? This one has a little bit thinner mouthfeel than the other ones we've tried.
It's not as viscous.
It's it's a little thinner, a little thinner overall tasting. But it's good, and it's so nostalgic for me because
You
my
wanna talk
mom probably has some right now in her cupboard.
You want to talk about a nice pairing? This with this
I haven't even tried
with
that
this
yet,
cigar,
but-
just fantastic.
Oh wow, it sure is.
It really complements it well. Some pairings are, passable, like you can enjoy the drink and the cigar. Some pairings are pretty good, like that's got some things that it enhances and brings out. To me, this is one of those like upper 10%.
Now, Jose,
these really go well together.
One of the things we do, we were talking about pairing with whiskey earlier. One of the things we do, and we had an event centered around this, is we do what's called the whiskey sniff. And this is where you light up your cigar and you get into the flavor of the cigar, about a half inch to an inch of your cigar, and get that in your palate. And then the way to choose the whiskey that's going to go with this cigar is you go smell the whiskey.
Really?
Yeah, it works every time.
And
I do this. I've been doing this for years where I just, I start a cigar outside, of course. Then I go inside to my bar and I start opening whiskeys and smelling them. And usually pare it down to like 2 whiskeys and go, no, I'm going to have this one. And it always pairs well. It's such a great way to do it.
Well, and the way y'all did the sniff was obviously different than just about any other event. Well, it is different than any other event I've been to because you can light up your cigar and then go around to the different vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can't walk around with your cigar at other whiskey events.
right, because generally they're indoors,
Yeah,
and the
generally
cigar
it's-
area is
you're
outdoors.
just
or in a
trying
special
all the
area,
whiskeys. You have certain people that's all they're doing is they're slamming as much whiskey as they can. Your event was the essence of the cigar with the whiskey, which
and maybe going back to, okay, I've tried it with this one, let me try it with that
Yeah,
one. And
yeah.
it was, and Ian came up with a great idea that we really should have thought of, but we will for the next whiskey sniff in 2019, and that is that to make the sniff portion of it easier,
a little smoother even,
yeah, we're going to have each of the whiskeys that are available there, each one of them poured out into a little Glencairn, and that way you'll have something you can very easily pick up. It's was a little awkward trying to pick up the bottles and
Sure.
sniff, and so it really, I think, will enhance the whole sniff portion of the event. But it was a lot of fun, and I was really proud that the people that were there were really happy with the event and had a good time.
Well, I start looking at it. We all have thoughts sometimes when we put an idea like that in motion, and you think, wow, it is kind of a silly idea. But you know what? So many people appreciated it, and I love that people came up and said, man, this is a great idea. I never thought about pairing my cigars with whiskey this way. I was pretty happy. And by the way, this whiskey is outstanding.
Okay, so let's talk whiskey, because one of the things I noticed was that Jose actually did a whiskey sniff on this before when we were in the break.
Right.
He opened up the top and took a sniff of the top of the bottle, and you liked what you smelled.
To be honest, that's probably one of the towards aroma of one of the scotches that really impressed me. It was something that you smell it, and what first thing that would come to your mind is, what great cigar do I have in the humidor that I want to pair it up with?
Wow.
Well, that and this cigar also go outstandingly well, as this is a bit of a brighter flavored cigar than the other ones we had. Less sweet, a little more toast, a little more of those flavors. It brings out all those bright fruit. This is a very fruity, fruit forward kind of whiskey right here, and it brings out a lot of that apricot kind of flavor in there. A little pear maybe.
apricot, pear, and banana is
banana,
what I get
yeah.
off of most Glenmorangie.
I'm a big fan I've become a big fan of Glenmorangie. And Alan, tell us a little bit more about this, where you got it, how it came to be.
So I was at a Scotch tasting in Dallas with some guys, and there was a guy there that I know fairly well through the cigar industry. And I had taken a very special bottle of Balvenie 12. It was a private barrel picked by David Stewart, their master distiller. And they had pretty much gone through most of mine because it's something that it hasn't been made in years and never be made again. And the guy was, this one, they had drank a little bit out of it.
So you were showing off, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so basically this one, people would drink it, but people really didn't realize exactly what it was and how special it could be. And so it hadn't had as much out of the bottle as mine had. And the guy was like, well, I'd really like to have the rest of that. I'll trade you. Okay. I know. I tried that. I've had the 12. I've had David's bottles before. I have another one at the house, and I'd love to. And so they do their Legend series where you can only buy them at certain duty-free airports around the world. This one came out of Dubai, and I was like, absolutely. I don't know a whole lot about it because they don't put a whole lot.
Right, they
out
don't give
about
you
it.
a whole lot of information, but it's really wonderful. I think it's a more complex blend, perhaps, than some of the others.
High complexity.
Yeah.
High complexity. Like, I have a bottle at the house of the 18-year-old, and that's got a lot of complexity. This has that similar kind of complexity to it with all the fruit flavors right up front. It has a little bite on the end of it that's nice.
Yep.
Is this a blend?
That's at 43%. No, that's a single barrel.
it's a
Yeah.
single
Sorry,
barrel,
my
okay.
bad. I referred to it as a blend, but I was really just talking about the complexity of it and how
the
wow,
flavors
it's just
blend,
arrived at such a wonderful blending of flavors, and it's smoother than I might have guessed.
You know what? You know what it makes the aftertaste makes me think of. You ever had a really good spiced pear
Oh yeah.
kind of thing? It has that kind of little bit of spicy bite to it, but lingering sweetness too. That's what that makes me think of.
So now that we have a little warmth from the whiskeys, let's talk a little bit about cigar regulation. The current place where the cigar exemption stands is that the deadline for the government to vote on this tax bill, which is what part? Yeah, I know, is now December 21st, and the tax bill has attached to it an exemption, if it were to be approved, for premium cigars from the legislation that was passed earlier in the year by the FDA, and so that's kind of where things stand. Alan, you and I have been round and round on both sides of the issue. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, doesn't it seem to you like the easiest thing would be the exemption?
Sure.
If the exemption passes through, we don't have to worry about trusting the government to make good decisions and all of the other things that would be involved in how they would enforce the regulations as it pertains to premium cigars. They've already basically said that, yeah, they're kind of putting the premium cigar, like the definition of all of that, kind of putting that off until later. It's not what the legislation was what was really their purpose, which we knew all along.
Sure.
Because the purpose of the legislation is about trying to keep the flavored cigars and the inexpensive cigars and the machine mades out of the hands of younger people, particularly minors. And as we've talked about on the show, the premium cigar industry doesn't have an issue with minors. There aren't minors walking around.
We don't target them.
Yeah, and they're not coming in stores like this.
17-year-old kids aren't coming in here trying to buy a box of Padrones.
I said it
Padrillos
before. I don't know the last time I was on my way into a cigar shop and a 15-year-old said, "Hey man, can you buy me some cigars?"
Right, exactly.
Like that's
Exactly.
Cigarettes, yes. Cigars, no.
Well, you know,
yeah, exactly.
You brought it up, the government regulations, and when was, I'm going to put it out there, when was the last time the government did something for us that was good when it came to regulations?
Oh, remember when the government did something for us that wasn't self-serving to them or reinforcing their own bureaucracy?
That was like 1941, I think.
Well, you know, the FDA has made it fairly clear through some of the moves that they've made outside of this regulation that what they're really targeting is, I mean, flavored tobacco is about to become a thing of the past.
But you know what really is, to be in all honesty, right now, cigars are falling into third place.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's vape,
Yeah.
Right.
and then the flavored stuff.
Vape and
we're
the flavored stuff.
in all honesty.
Yeah, and you've got, you know, I get that. When you've got guys making bottles of vape juice in their bathtub and then selling it to whoever, whatever, yeah, you got to do something because you don't know what's in it.
But see, that's not going to change. In
No.
fact, that'll become more prevalent.
Probably.
Once you can no longer go out and buy, you know, blueberry flavored tobacco for your hookah, you know?
But cigars, there's tobacco and there's pectin. Did I mention tobacco?
Yeah.
I mean, so I got all the ingredients.
You got
That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
But even the glue that we use for the binder and the wrapper is a sap from a tree.
Yeah.
So you could take a premium cigar to any lab in the world, and the readout is going to be the tar content, the pH, the calcium, the magnesium, and it's going to read, the printout is going to be, it's 100% tobacco.
It's 100%
Not the same
tobacco,
thing with
100%
cigarettes and vape
Right.
and all that other stuff.
Well,
No,
and it's
that's
not like even some of the more like hand rolled flavored cigars, like the Drew Estate Natural stuff, right? Like them or don't, they're not targeting anybody. Their packaging is not targeting anybody under the age of 30, really. You know, I mean, people that can afford cigars
Well, yeah, you afford. That's the key thing.
is a big thing.
You talk about the Drew Estate and their acids. Those aren't cheap.
No, they're not.
Those aren't 99-cent 2-packs that you go in and buy at the convenience
Right.
store.
And
those are still premium cigars.
That's
And
right.
I will say, and I know a lot of people, you know, bag on them. I enjoy an acid every once in a while, and I will be really, really bummed to see those have to go
My
away.
wife loves those, actually.
I'll tell you what, Jonathan is a dear friend of both mine and Jose's. Known him since he had his kiosk in the World Trade Center.
Wow, yeah.
And so he has a place in the marketplace with Jura State, because I will say for the naturals, the acids, that is a great entry point.
Yeah.
Because of the sweet tip and the flavor for a guy that, hey, you want to try a cigar? Oh, I don't know. Try this. It's got a sweet tip to it.
Right.
Hey, this is great.
Yeah.
But it's, kids that are they're not going,
Nobody.
people that use cigars, some of the machine rolled stuff to put other stuff in it.
Yeah.
You can't do that with a premium. You cannot, if you're listening, you cannot take an acid or a natural, cut it open, put that in and wrap it up, because you destroy the cigar when you do
Destroy
it.
everything.
It's worthless.
And what's craziest about the whole thing is that the stuff they're putting in these flavored
Is
cigars
legal.
is legal and about to be legal pretty much everywhere else. So that's, it does, again, the governmental bureaucracy of it all
Sure.
will make you a bit crazy.
Well, and you look at some of the things like California has done, that they've increased the tax base astronomically, thinking, it's going to make us more money. No, the people that live in California now that are premium cigar smokers, they're just buying it online.
Yeah.
That's right.
They're
That's right.
You're hurting
So they've
yourselves
destroyed the
by-
industry.
Yeah.
And one of the things that
and lost revenue because
Of
of,
course.
it.
And one of the things we discussed on last week's show with Tom Poehler is he believes that the FDA is moving towards bans on cigars being sold across state lines, which will mean
that's a huge thing.
which will mean that the JRs and the CIs of the world, you won't be able to buy those online unless you live in the same state they have an operation they can ship it to you.
Well,
from.
and that's a reason. That's another reason. You've got the Casa de Monte Cristo stores that Altadis opened. You've got the CIs that General Cigars is opening. That's the reason they're opening in these major metropolitan areas. You've got a CI in Dallas. You've got multiple Casas in Texas. So now, if you're buying from JR Cigar, who is owned by Altadis, which is Casa de Monte Cristo, they can ship
Technically,
here.
right, yeah.
CI, same thing. If you've got one in all these major metropolitan areas, then, you may not be able to ship it to Montana or Wyoming, but all the other states are going to have them, and they can use that for a drop point.
Before we wrap the show up, Jose, what can you tell us about what's in the future for EP Carrillo?
Well, this is going to be next year is going to be our Ernesto's 10th anniversary. We've had a great year. Last year was very good too. To be honest, we got to look a lot into what the FDA is going to be into. One of the things we have done, and I've worked a lot with our international markets. I've been going to Europe a lot, and we've been growing a lot there. Even last week, we made some contacts from some countries in Africa, also in Asia. But more, what we looking forward is to continue to build up the brands, to come out with consistency, keeping up the quality of tobacco, and just doing what we've done for many years, making great cigars and being consistent on what we do. I mean, other than that, there's not really a lot of things you can do today.
You mentioned your involvement in the European markets. In shops where you can go in and buy Cubans right off the shelf, are cigars that are not from Cuba, that are from the other countries, are they beginning to make some inroads in those areas?
Let me give you a little bit of history on the industry. United States consumes more or less between 65 to 67% of all the cigars made in the world. Spain used to be the second largest market, but now because of their economy, Germany has become number 2, Spain is number 3. And then, of course, the hardest market that's still very, very strong with Cubans is still England.
The UK, yeah.
But other than that, Spain, France, Switzerland, Sweden, already the non-Cuban cigars have taken a big part of it. Because you've got to understand that right now, Dominican Republic worldwide is the largest producer of cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Second place is Nicaragua. Third place is Cuba. Cuba last year only made 90 million cigars.
Right.
So the situation in Cuba and the inconsistency of their product has allowed us, with better cigars, better made,
Better
they're going to
tobacco.
draw better tobacco, to really grow into the international market. But still, people think about Cuba, and they'll smoke anything that they make out because of the name. But it's like I tell people, why would you pay $30 for X cigar when you can get a good Dominican cigar, a good Nicaraguan cigar for $10 or $12 is going to be just as good. So my 2 cents on Cuban is this, and I've said it a million times: overrated, overpriced, inconsistent. When they're good, they're as good as any cigar, but not better. The word is different. Get this into your head.
Right.
It's just different. Every country, whether it's Nicaragua, Mexico, Peru, Ecuador, Dominican, Cuba, Costa Rica, Mexico, are going to have different characteristics of the flavors depending on the seed that you're growing there. So there's no such thing that this cigar is better than other. It's just different.
Right. It's different, and everyone's palates are different.
Exactly.
That's a big
Well,
part of it.
it's the old myth that Cubans make the best cigars because you couldn't get them, and now that they're even a little more readily available now than they used to be, people always ask me, "Do you think Cuban cigars are the best?" Cubans make great cigars, and they make really bad cigars too.
Yeah.
Just like everywhere else.
And then there's the other thing, which is I can't tell you the last time I was smoking a Dominican cigar or a Nicaraguan cigar and thought, I wonder if this is a counterfeit.
Yeah, right.
And I read somewhere that as much as 80% of the cigars that are, sold or given as Cubans in the United States could be counterfeits.
I've read 70. I've read 80. I've read as high as 90 in some.
Especially if you buy them in Miami or in Mexico.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to put this out there. If you are on the beach in Mexico and somebody comes up to you with a 5-pack of cigars in a plexiglass box, you are buying fake Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
Period. There is no plexiglass in a factory in Cuba.
If you're in South Beach in Miami and the cigar store owner invites you to the little room in the back and sells you some Cuban cigars, probably not Cubans either.
True. Yeah, I want to, real quick, while we're here at Maduro's, and the people out there can't see it, but there's a caricature over there of a very dear friend of mine. His name is Gene Beck, and he goes by he's actually really big in the whiskey world in Houston. He goes by the Whiskey Redneck.
The Whiskey Redneck.
He has actually had a private barrel of Russell's Reserve picked for him. He has been instrumental. He's been around from the social since Chris and I started it 4 years ago. And
I think Ian is bringing the stand-up over so
awesome.
we can
and
get
I
in
will
the
tell
camera
you,
shot.
Gene is actually over in the other room, and I would love for y'all to have him on the show. He has come so far, and he's sitting there talking about, hey, Gene, I love you. And this looks very much like him. He's on Instagram as the Whiskey Redneck. But he put a thing on here, and it said, Alan, Denney, say poop, please.
And now you have.
Hey, I had. But y'all should, you talk about a riot to have on. He is, to have him and Chris on the same show, it'd be hilarious.
Well, you'll have to crash or you'll lose your advantage.
Oh, no, that'll be after my next visit.
Okay, gotcha.
Then we can
I've only met Gene a few times, and he is hilarious every single time.
Well, one of the most fun shows we've ever had was also a suggestion from you guys when we had the Tater Talk expert on the show.
Oh, Wade.
Wade was just... he calls it like he sees it.
Man,
I love that.
and I love Wade because he's all about transparency in the industry, whether it's beer or whiskey. Just be honest.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things going on right now with a couple of companies that are not being honest with some stuff and their regulations, and don't know where that's going to go. But
call him on it.
Yeah,
That's what he
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of transparency, I would be falling down on the job if I didn't tell you this may be one of the better whiskeys I've had in quite some time. That Glenmorangie, how do you pronounce it?
Glenmorangie.
Dutoc. That's
outstanding.
spectacular. It's outstanding. So, guys, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This has been
It's
a
been
blast.
our pleasure.
It's a
and
pleasure as always.
I hope it won't be my last time. I know it's not going to be Alan's last time. He has a record to keep up.
That's
Yes.
right.
By the way, I just want to mention the last time that I got to hang with you, we were hanging at that little event where Dave Pickerel from Whistle Pig,
Such a
rest in
heartbreaking.
peace,
Yeah.
was there, and he is already missed. I was wondering, did you make it away with one of those little samplers of the Boss Hog?
This is
I
good.
made away with multiple
Oh,
samples.
you're a
As
bad,
matter
bad
of
man,
fact,
Alan
as a
Denney.
matter of fact, so Gene, who not only is instrumental in whiskey, Gene is
I
a
didn't
dear.
get to taste the Boss Hog.
I'll make sure that happens. Gene is a dear friend of mine. I'm not. Hey, we hang out at the cigar shop. I go to his house. He comes to my. I mean, we're good friends. Our wives hang out, And so while we were there, I actually got Dave to sign one of those bottles to
Nice.
Gene.
Nice.
And brought it back to him.
Fantastic.
So and when I actually called Gene that morning and said, "Hey, don't crack that bottle,"
Yeah.
because Dave just passed away. And I'm going to tell you, for the entire whiskey world, because Dave has been instrumental from Maker's Mark to he was doing the Metallica
Yes,
whiskey, and
absolutely.
that was going to be one of the few, or is going to be one of the few named whiskeys that isn't a BS whiskey. It's not
Yeah.
some crap made by
Right.
somebody else, and they threw their name on it like a certain UFC fighter that I could name.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That stuff is garbage. Oh my god, it's trash, and I will talk about how much trash that is. But
love it.
Hey, trash talking is a part of the UFC.
truth.
So you're just keeping up with Joneses on that one.
Yeah, right. But when he was doing this one for Metallica, he was doing the blend on this
Right.
and making sure that it was
He
going to
was
be
making
something
sure it was
great.
good whiskey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to tasting that. Hopefully,
We did
sometime
taste
in the Metallica.
Okay.
Yeah, the blackened.
Oh, that's right. We
did.
sure did. We sure did. And it was, now that I'm
Because
remembering,
Keegan brought
it
that
was
into
quite
us.
good.
That was
Yes.
kind of a last minute thing we tossed on there.
He
That's
saved
awesome.
us on a show when someone canceled. As
That's
a matter
right.
of fact, by
That's
bringing
right.
the blackened in. So,
Oh, I forgot it was that show.
yeah, it was. It was very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. We appreciate it. Number 117 is in the books. We have some pretty exciting things coming up. I mentioned in 2 weeks Ian's Crazy Beer Show, which is something I have to tell you I'm really looking forward to. And then on next week's show, Abby Perry from Whitmeyer's will be joining us.
Oh,
and
I love Travis.
it's going to be just absolutely spectacular. So we're looking forward to that. I again can't thank you gentlemen enough.
Pleasure's always.
And
Always a pleasure, guys.
hope we can do this again.
The next the one that I will call y'all, and the next time Ernesto's with me in Houston.
It's a plan.
That's the one. Got
It's
to
a
get
plan.
him on the show.
We'd love to have him on. It would be terrific. So we want to thank everyone again for being a part of the program. I've got just a little bit of this Glenmorangie left, and so I'll use it to toast and say, have a wonderful week, everyone. See you next week on Smoking and Toasting 118, and cheers.
Cheers.